the idea of today is to give you a few strategy, because many times we have the tool, we have done thing, and then we forget we have them, we forget we are very smart, and we forget to use what we know. So that's the goal of today. There's so much information on this. There's so many available resource and tool. Obviously, we cannot cover everything in an hour. So the objective today is to give you a brief overview of what's available, what is it that you can do, and also to help you reflect on what's happening. And I always stay on at the end. This is usually 45 to 50-minute presentation. I always stay on at the end because I really like when people participate and share. So I'm going to be also asking question, and I'm going to ask you, when I ask the question, if you want to answer and share. Yeah, I think it's very, very useful for everybody. I mean, here, as you can tell, we have most of us in Miami, but we do have somebody who is not in Miami. And we have people from the banking industry, from the insurance industry, from the ad industry. I mean, it's a big word, so I think we can all benefit from each other. So for those of you who know me as well as those who know me too well, my name is Sarah Gilles-Couto. I've been a certified coach for the past 7-8 years now. I think it goes too fast. Before that, I was a banker. I was a banker for 18 years. I started my career in Argentina, moved up to New York, and finish it in Miami. I work for French bank, English bank, an American bank. So, and I've worked in pretty much many departments in the same bank. So I know a lot about the banking industry and the finance industry. And as many of you mentioned, you know, I am married to somebody who is also a banker, my husband, Luis Carlos. And some of you arrived here today him, so I really appreciate that you trusted him enough to come to listen. So why did I become a coach? I became a coach because I found coaching after losing my job. During the crisis, I lost my job twice in 2 years, and that was devastating. However, as everybody knows, usually when life, you know how they say in America, you know, life throws you lemon, make a lemonade. And the truth is, when something happens to you, you don't want to do a lemonade. You just want to sit and cry and feel miserable and say, how could it happen to me, right? Because we are so great, and we are. But sometimes life shows you that you can be better somewhere else. And I hired a coach after I lost my job for the second time. It was totally unrelated reason. And it was actually desire the second time. I asked to leave, so it was not a surprise. However, I hired a coach because I was emotionally not feeling great, and not to say I was destroyed. But I hired a coach, and she changed my life because she made me realize that we all have great potential, and we can really do tons of things in life that we don't even think about, right? And I really fell in love with coaching. So that's why I decided to get certified. I went back to school, got my graduation, and then I went to the ICF. ICF is the International Coaching Federation, which is the entity that regulates coaching in the United States. And I also got certified through the ICF and eventually became the president of the organization a few years ago. And then as I was starting my coaching career, I started my own company, and I also developed leadership program because I realized there was a big need for leadership out there, and it became my passion. It became so much my passion that I'm currently going to university. I'm going back to school to do a master's degree in leadership because I really love leadership, and I think it is so awesome. I mean, I'm passionate about it. So anyway, I want to ask you a quick question before we start this session. I would like to know, for those who have a virtual team now, since it started, what are the top 3 challenges you have, or the top 1 challenges you had since this whole work at home situation started? So you can either answer the question by raising your hand, or you can put a few words in the chat. or maybe you haven't had any challenge yet. So let me know. I'll give you a few minutes so you can let me know. And Elisa will tell me if somebody writes in the chat. Welcome, Laura. I saw you join. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Andres. I saw you join as well. Thank you for being with us today. Okay, so do we have any answer about the top challenges that you have since your team started the work at home?
Getting used to it. That's the hardest part.
Okay. Maricar said, managing time zones.
Managing time, okay. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a huge one. I was giving a conference yesterday for a client, and I had a young lady who said, she asked me at the end, she says, Sierra, you know, my concern is how do I explain to my kids my schedule? And it was interesting. I said, why do you say that? And she said, well, because my daughter wants her mommy back. And that kind of hit me. We don't think about that. But truth is, when we start working at home, usually we work more. And at the beginning, we don't have the same organization. So until everything gets organized, it can be very tough in the family, especially if both parents work, you know. So anyway, anything else?
Okay, Laura said, streamlining communication.
Okay.
Streamlining communication.
Okay. Yeah.
Monica Snyder said, making sure everyone stays connected without overconnection.
Yes, overconnection. That's a good word. That's what's happening. And what's happening is that we're working longer hour. I mean, first, we don't have the commute. So everybody's excited. We can either go, you know, sleep longer, or we can do more things, or we can work more, which is usually the one we do. Okay, and then what's happening there is that it's hard to separate, right? And it's a really tough exercise. And I will give you my example. You know, my husband and I, we both work. So now our bedroom has been dedicated to be his office and our bedroom. So that's actually a good thing, because that obliged him to stop at some point. But sometimes you have to make adjustment. It's not easy. It's not easy. Okay, anything else?
Jose said that it is harder to separate job from private life.
Yeah, it is so true. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, and it relates to that point, about self-leadership. So when we talk about leadership, everybody thinks of leadership as a skill, you know, a good leader, bad leader, you know, I mean, leadership, it's interesting because leadership starts with us. It starts with every one of you. And truth is, to be a leader, first you must know how to lead your life, right? It sounds like a little bit silly, but truth is, usually sometimes we don't do that well, and then we pretend to go out and lead other people. And it is very important to take care of oneself and to lead oneself. We need to lead our life. So what is taking care of myself? What is leading my life? Is being in control, is making decision, is responding to situation instead of reacting to situation, right? So for example, I've put here, it's taking care of self. And for those who were with me a few weeks ago, there was a webinar on how to focus on the important, on the things that matter during a crisis or during COVID-19, right? And I talk a lot about the alignment between the mental, spiritual, and physiological needs. So that's the first thing. To be a good leader, you need to lead yourself, and that starts with you as a person, right? I mean, it is so important. And of course, that leads to lead it by example. So for example, today, you know, I noticed that everybody, at least everybody that has shown his or her face, is dressed well, and is, even though Jose, you show your beard, you still look awesome, so it's okay. But everybody looks professional, right? And when you're a leader, right, you want to show by example. You want to lead by being an example, right? And if I come to a meeting and dress with my hair badly, badly done and very, unprofessional, that's not going to be inspiring for my team. So we want to make sure we always show the example, we always lead, and we want to make sure as well that we have clear expectation for us and then for the other people. I mean, self-leadership is the first component of any leadership program you could find. Many people forget that. Many people, when they talk about leadership, they say, oh, how could I lead other? How could I do this? My team, my team, my team. Hey, the team starts with you. You're the leaders. And even if you lead just yourself or one person, you're still a leader, right? So leading starts with you. And it is so important that we don't forget to take care of ourselves. And that's on a daily basis. We need to make sure every day we start on the right foot. And again, I'm not going to talk about what I did already in my previous webinar, but I would encourage you to really make sure that every day you take care of yourself. Even if it's a 10 minutes walk in the morning or in the evening, but you take time to take care of yourself. Your mind, your spirit, your body, everything. We are, not only what we eat, what we see, but what we hear, everything. So it's important that we nourish our body, our mind, our spirit with very good and positive information. Okay, so that's the first thing. So my next slide is about, so if we were going to compare the before and now, because obviously we are in a transition, right? We're in a transition. So how was the leading the team before the work at home became the new norm, right? So, I mean, did you use any tool maybe? What worked? What did not work? If you had to rate your communication before the quarantine, how was it? Was it super good? Was it okay? Was it so-so? Or was it really bad? Right? Because truth is, to improve what we're doing now, we want to make a small analysis of how was it before. Because sometimes I speak with some clients and I ask them, I say, well, how was it before? And they say, no, we had the same issue. Okay, so it's not the virtual change that is causing the issue, it is something else. And that's a really important point. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is kind of reflect and think, how was I leading my team before? Like, how was it? Let me remind myself, how was it? Were we successful? What did we do? Did we use any tool? And I'm going to mention some tool today. And you don't always need tools. Sometimes it is very useful to have them. But again, a tool is only useful as long as you use it, right? It's not a one-time done deal thing. I'm a big advocate on using the tool that you have used or that you have available or that you have barely looked at. So that's super important. So the first thing would be, how was your communication before? Like if you had to take a guess, you can say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1, it was terrible, 5, it was fantastic. Where was I? And then you put where you were. And then you kind of go back and you say, how is it now? Okay? Does it make sense? Are you following me? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So when we want to discuss some strategy, okay, the first question I would ask is, if what we had was fine and functioning, or at least part of it, can we replicate what we were doing in the office? And I give you example. Okay, and I know we have Susanna here who works in the same team as my husband at Bank of America. So I'm sure she smiled when I say that. But for example, they were big on happy hours, those people, you know. Some people like happy hours. I can tell them they love happy hours. And they have now a virtual weekly happy hours. And I have never seen such a cheerful group. It's amazing how they can cheer, and they share in their kitchen, and they have a drink or a glass of water, and they still have the happy hour. But instead of being in Brickell or Mary Brickell Place or whatever, it is now at home, and they still do it, right? So the thing is, what is it that you can replicate that you were doing in the office? And I'm using this example of happy hour. I know this is not work, but it is sometimes important to have social event within work. You know, we are not machine. We need to socialize a little bit. And the best proof of that is that right now, some people are craving for social interaction because we cannot have them as we used to. So that's the first thing I would ask you. Like, what is it that you can replicate that you were doing before and that you are not doing now? And I gave you the example of happy hours because it seems like something that people could have said, oh, okay, forget it. No, they didn't forget it. They started shortly after the work at home situation started, and they've been following it. And, you know, I admire that. I think it's awesome. Then we have tools, right? So, for example, I'm going to briefly touch base on each of them, maybe not each of them, but most of them, for those who are not aware of what they are. But there's tools like DISC, which is a personality assessment. There are tools like emotional intelligence, to see how high is our emotional intelligence. ELI, which is the Energy Leadership Index, which is about your attitude. We have Kolbe A. Kolbe is about the cognitive strength, right? What is your instinct, the way you do things. We have also assessment that are part of the 5 Behavior of Cohesive Team by Patrick Lencioni, right? If you have used those tools in the past, this is something you could really use now. And I'm going to show them to you now. Now, if you have never used any tool, well, you know, it is never too late. You can start now, right? And I put here a picture of some of the tools we used with the businesses I work with. They are very simple to use, very powerful, and they can really help you develop your team, right? Listen, whether you have used them or not, doesn't matter. You can also have the answer within your own team, right? Your team has a lot of strength. You may not even be aware of the strength, but if you start thinking, you know, what everybody's good at, then you're going to find. You know, many times I have found myself in meetings, and when we discuss about projects, usually people say, oh, for that she's awesome. Oh, for this he's the perfect. So the truth is, you know the strength of your team, right? But sometimes we don't think about them, right? We think about, oh, let me use the tool. And it's important to have a combination. So what I've decided to do today, I'm going to give you a very brief summary of each tool, because if you have used them, I want to encourage you to go back to them, right? And see how we can apply them to the virtual world, because you really can apply them. They can all be applied to you in your life. Every single one of the one I've chosen here. So for example, this one, the first one, the Energy Leadership Index. That's a tool I discovered in my coaching school. It's an assessment on your attitude, whether you are positive or negative. And what I mean by attitude is actually kind of measuring whether you tend to react or you tend to respond. And you all know that sometimes people react a little bit too quickly, right? Don't they teach us, like, when you're upset, never answer an email, never reply when you're mad, or when you're in a hurry, like, take your time, digest what you want to say so you can say it nicely. Because reality is, many times we tend to react instead of responding. And that's not something we should do. So for example, the Energy Leadership Index will measure that difference. And through coaching, this is a tool used in executive coaching, in leadership coaching, right? So when you take this assessment, it is usually because you're going to be working with a coach, whether it's in group or individual. You're going to be working with a coach, and you're going to learn how to start to respond to situation instead of reacting, right? So that's one of the tools. Of course, the more you work with this tool, the better you're going to communicate with other people. And then you're really going to understand not only how you perceive others, but how others perceive you. And you're going to have a conscious choice of being really the person you want to be. So it's an awesome tool. For those who don't know, I highly recommend. The next one, I love it too. It's my friend DISC. After a few times in my work life and in my coach life, and this is a personality assessment. So personality assessment, and I use Everything DISC Workplace, which is the one that's especially for work. The DISC model serves as a foundation for the Everything DISC application suite. They have many. They have for manager, for conflict resolution. They have tons of them. But I've put the example of Everything Workplace, which is the simplest one. And it will measure your personality traits, based on the acronym DISC, D-I-S-C. And they actually stand for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. So depending where your dot is in the graph, that's going to tell you how you like to communicate, how people should work with you, and is really going to improve your group relationship. So, for example, when we use DISC, it's usually in a group. So not only people discover how they are, but then they also discover how their colleagues are, right? So they can interact better. So this is a very useful tool if you have used it. If you have it in your drawer, please take it back and reread it. And the reason why I'm saying that, it's because there's many things that you can use from that report that are valuable in today's virtual world. Now, if you've taken it when you were 15 or 20 years old and starting your career, and you have switched and changed career and you move, it's time to take a new one. It may change. Mine has, not a lot, but the dot may change a little bit, based on your experience, because and your responsibility. We tend to change as we become leaders of teams, and if we change career, that may also change a little bit. So the DISC is very good tool for you to understand, because depending where you are, you can really adapt that to your virtual place, right? And you can make sure your colleague do the same, especially if you have taken with your team in the past. For those who are here who have taken it in their teams, I strongly encourage you to do a session between your team and go back to your result and check it and see how it applies to today's world. You will be amazed how it applies, right? So that's also a fantastic tool. The other one I want to briefly touch base on is the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. This is based on the book of Patrick Lencioni. The original book is The 5 Dysfunction of a Team. And the 5 dysfunction of a team is actually starts with the lack of trust, the absence of conflict, the lack of commitment, lack of accountability, and lack of result. It's like a pyramid. That's why I put the little draw on the left side. And this is a tool we use for teamwork, to improve teamwork, to improve team performance. Same thing, if you have taken it with your team in the past, right? You want to make sure you go back and you can retake, right? The question, they're always the same. You can retake and see how it applies in today's situation with your team, right? Because what you will see is that it's exactly the same, but it's virtual. So we'll make it work, right? How do you build trust, for example, right, in the thing? I'm not going to go in details now, but there's tons of work building trust virtually with your team, whether it's using Zoom, Zoom or any other platform now. They even have break room. I mean, it's amazing everything you can do. You can play games. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. There's a lot of way to build trust within your team, whether it's having fun activity or just establishing, new pattern to develop the trust within the group. And obviously, you can also do group coaching. I mean, that's a fantastic way to do it. We've done with a lot of clients, and actually, I was very surprised. I didn't think it was so important for people to benefit from group coaching in corporation. My client have told me, well, that helps a lot because people feel lonely. So it is interesting because when you're not in a certain situation, you may not know what other people are feeling, right? And because coaching is my passion and I am blessed with clients and I work a lot, sometimes I don't see what's happening elsewhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure, we can do group coaching. That's a lot of fun. And we do it in Zoom too. We do it in group. And, again, if you have done assessment, we can use them. And if not, we don't use them. It's okay. The last tool I want to touch base on, it's also one of my favorite. And the reason why it's one of my favorite is because it's the one that helped me understood a few years ago. Actually, it was 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. It helped me understand why, after being very successful in banking for 16 years, I was literally a failure in my last banking job. It was horrible. I wasn't fit for it, and it was just not the right thing. However, when I came in contact with Kolbe, because actually one of my coaches with me, and I started to understand how it worked, I was amazed at this tool. I said, well, that's incredible. And the more they explained it to me, the more I understood why my last job in banking could have never worked. No matter what the situation could have been. I mean, I could have a different boss, a different environment. It didn't matter. It was just not a fit for who I am. And I had competency. It wasn't a competency, but I didn't have the fit in terms of what they call cognitive strength. So called that measure the way you do things, right? And it's absolutely wonderful once you understand how it works, because you will kick your productivity like never before if you really use it. And for example, in the virtual world, we have tons of strategy with that tool that can help you be more productive depending on where your profile is. So if you don't know anything about Kolbe, I mean, reach out to us after this call because it's a lot of fun. And I know some people here on the line, they have done it with me, and it's a lot of fun. It's really a lot of fun, right? Okay, so now I want to do something. Now I want to do a poll. So what's going to happen is that before we go to the three key strategy to really lead your team efficiently, I would like to ask you those questions. And Elisa, she's going to pull out the poll. Elisa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Can you pull up the poll, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So the poll is 4 questions. It's very quick and easy. So the first question, it's kind of to have an idea of who knows what in this call. The first question is, what assessment tool, if any, have you used with your leadership team? So I have put the one we use as well as other that we know and have used in the past. Then the second question is, how satisfied were you with the tool you use? And then the third question is, have you reviewed the results since you're working remotely? And then the fourth is, what do you consider your best asset in leading your team? So if you could take a few minutes to answer the poll, I would appreciate. Are you getting some result, Elisa, already?
Yes, 41% of the participants voted.
Okay, we're going to give them a few more minutes if they want to answer. Thank you for those people who are putting comment in the chat. Thank you, Maricar. You know, I was working with a client in Panama, and we were talking about their competency tool, and I believe that's the one you have, the Saville Wave.
Mm-hmm. We do have a competency tool as well, yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, because I looked at it, I said, I think this is from your company. And now that I see it here, I see, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a very good one. It's a very good one. Okay. So, Elisa, do you think you can pull up the result?
Okay, 66% of the participants voted.
Okay, perfect. That's good enough. Let's look at it.
Okay.
I still have an idea. Okay, perfect. Can everybody see that? Yes? Okay, awesome. So, 38, I'm going to do like Teresa. I'm going to put my little glasses, right? Aren't they cute? Okay, that's the thing. Now that I work in the computer, I need to use my glasses. So 38% of people have used this. Wow, this is awesome. 38% of people in this school can actually improve their virtual team right now. 5 behavior, 38, awesome. Kolbe index, 13, awesome. Hogan, nobody. Okay. Emotional intelligence, 25. Energy leadership, nobody. 360, 38. Internal tool, okay, that's the one we saw. 25% unfortunately never use any of those tools, okay? You should talk to your boss. How satisfied were you? Okay, so mostly of the people were satisfied. Half of you very satisfied, some not satisfied. You know, unfortunately, I will tell you something regarding the assessment. The key and the value of the assessment is not the assessment. Is the debrief that you get on the result of the assessment and the application that you take from it. And most of the time, what I've come across when I go and see prospects, you know, we start talking and say, yeah, we've done those. And then I say, oh, so what is your profile? And they look at me and say, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you just said you took DISC. So where are you? And they go, oh, I don't know. And, you know, it's very sad. And that's probably why we have 13% of people not satisfied. Because the importance and the value of taking an assessment is understanding the result. And, you know, it's actually why I went to get certified in Kolbe and in DISC, because I wanted to really understand the tool. And I take a lot of time with my client to explain that. And if they have taken, I ask them, you know, if it's too long and they want to retake, that's fine. But if not, we can work on the one they have. It is so important that we use what we have. Because I truly believe there's always some kind of satisfaction that you take from an assessment. You know, it may be not great, you know, sometimes say, oh, we knew that, but, you know, usually they're pretty good. Have you looked at the result? Yes, good for you. Those 25%, you rock. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, because this is the first thing we should do. What do you think is your best asset in Legion team? Your personality, awesome. Your experience, awesome. your coaching mentoring skill. Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you, Elisa, for sharing the results here with everybody. The reason why I wanted to do that was kind of to have an idea of who I'm speaking with, and how much you know, how much you don't know. It is so important. But kudos to those who have went back to the assessment and look at them and they want to use it. That's very, very important. So now what's going to happen is that we're going to talk about 3 keys to leading your virtual team. And Marika, this is for you. I know you have to leave at 5, and I'll be done by 5. And I will stay for whoever wants to stay to answer a question or anything they want to comment or chat, or maybe they saw somebody in the camera they like and they remember and they want to say hello. We can do that after. So 3 keys. Very easy, very easy. The first one, and you all know that, it's you. Yes, it's you. You know why? Because your experience in your team, in your institution as a leader is key, right? Second, your intuitive listening. When you become a leader, you actually develop intuitive listening. There's the passive listening, which is kind of, I don't care, keep talking. Then you have the active listening, which is when you pay attention. And the third one is the intuitive listening, which is the listening we use in coaching, which is listening with all the cue. So obviously, when we are in person, some people may think it's easier. Actually, I disagree to that. When I started my coaching career, I used to coach a lot over the phone. The results were brilliant. You know why? Because the silence has power, and the tone of voice says much more sometimes than a fake smile. So it is so important to listen to those non-verbal cues, and you can do that over the phone. You can do that now virtually. I mean, it's amazing. Your intuition, of course, your guts, what your gut's telling you, your education, and your mentoring or coaching. And many of those who have answered mentoring or coaching, I think it was 38%, have proven my point. You are the greatest asset in really managing your team better. And I give you an example, right? So for example, when you think about every person in your team, you want to use them for what they're good at. And if that person was always the cheerleader of the group, call her, have a conversation with her, say, okay, now that we're virtual, what are your suggestions to make this a little bit more interesting? What are your suggestions to make this work? What could be a suggestion for a new schedule? Like, what could work better, right? And it's a work we have to do with our team. To work better, we need to do something called communication. Communication is, I would say, almost 98% of 90% of the conflict, right? Because usually what happens is it's a lack of communication, or it's a miscommunication that leads to conflict, because we didn't understand what they meant, or maybe we didn't express ourselves correctly, and so forth. So for example, here in communication, what's happening is that on one side you have yourself with your personality. And I put here an example. For example, if you have done those assessments, you know your personality at work. You know whether you have a dominant personality or an influential personality, right? Whether you're more of a supportive person or more of a data analytical person, right? Then for those who have taken Kolbe, you know your strength, right? Your inner strength. Then your preference in terms of how do I like to communicate? Do I like email? Do I like text? Do I like WhatsApp? Do I like phone? Do I like texting? There's tons of things. So all of those things that are yours, you're going to have to compare with your team. And I would highly encourage you to have a small meeting with everybody on your team, whether you do it together or you're doing small meeting, but really go over that and see what works. You want to make sure, everybody's comfortable. A happy employee is an engaged employee. An engaged employee is an employee that stays in your institution. And that's very valuable. You know, as we say, somebody happy can really change the environment, the climate of the culture of the team. Somebody unhappy, unfortunately, has a lot of power too, right? So we want to make sure everybody is aware of that. So what's going to happen? Communication. You have your style, you have your team style, you add your little bit of virtual component. You know, I will tell you one thing. Now with this virtual world, we don't really see people, I mean, you know, the entire body, right? So maybe we don't need to put the same shoes. You know, maybe we can have relaxed pants or shorts. You know, it's different. But at the same time, we need to make sure we present well, right? And so it's a good reminder because we see ourselves in the camera. So you have your style, the virtual component. You have your team style and the virtual component. And that it's going to be your new normal here, right? That's going to be the new normal. So you want to make sure you interact, you communicate with your team, right? This is so important that you take time to see what works best. Don't be afraid of trying new things. You know, don't be afraid of trying new things. It will work. I can assure you it will work. And if it doesn't, you try it, doesn't work, we'll go back to the old one or we find another one. Many people have wonderful ideas, you know, and I always encourage my people to use this person that has so much asset for that thing, you know. So that's so important. That's really, really important. Third thing, the assessment. You know, I've shown you a bunch of assessment today, and the goal was not to show you the assessment per se, but it was just to remind you that you have probably used those assessments. And some of you have told me, like 38% you have used them. You know, so go back to them. What does it mean, right? I mean, if your personality is it's IS in DISC, what does it mean, IS? Do you even remember, right? How do you use IS in the context of a virtual work? Now, if you use Kolbe and your personality, your profile is 8624, like the one I've put here, what does it mean? You know, it is useless to know if you don't know how to apply. And that's where the value lies in each of these assessments, right? And again, if you've never used an assessment, which I'm sure most of you have from the poll, that's why I wanted to do a poll, but I would encourage you to try one now. I mean, now, today, tomorrow, whenever. Just try one and see, you know, what it brings you. You could do that with your team. You could do that as you know, a team building activity, right? You take the assessment. Everything is online now. You know, all the classes, the course, so you can do it and you can have fun with it, right? And again, I would encourage you to use your team. Your team is your most valuable asset and resource. It is a great opportunity now to get to know them better, right? To take the time to pick up your phone and call someone and say, how's your family? You know, oh, I've noticed in the last call your son showed up. I've noticed, you know, somebody showed up. How they doing, right? It's a great time to get a little bit more personal. And you don't need to be extra personal, but just a little bit more. Just showing people you care. You know, the number one needs of every human being is being loved. You know, that's the first need everybody has. So when you work in a team and you're a team leader, showing people you care has a lot of value, a lot of value. So in conclusion, because it is time to wrap up, to successfully lead your virtual team, right? What is it that you're going to do? Well, you're going to analyze and assess what was working before, right? And see if it works, if you can adapt. You're going to engage all style that you have in your office. Remember, some people are very shy. Some people are not very good with technology. And if you're like me, you probably have received hundreds of video about what's happening when people have conference online, right? And the people that, you know, they think they're in camera and actually they're like this, you know, or you just see a big hand, right? So we have all of that. It happens. It's, not everybody is 25, not everybody is 65, and it doesn't matter where you are, but usually the way you speak in front of a camera can be very different if every day you use video with your friend that if you've never used a camera, right? So that's very important. Understand everyone is different, and transition may be longer. The difference between change and transition, change as a move. When you move something, like the move from the office to the home is a move. It's physical. Okay. The mental change, it's called transition. And sometimes it takes longer, right? So we need to understand that. Not everybody is reacting as fast, as well, and the same way we are, right? So I would encourage you to make a lot of things fun in your virtual environment, right? We cannot go out, to celebrate even with an orange juice now. We can't. We have to stay home, right? So let's see what we can make to have fun. For example, you have a meeting, ask everyone to bring a hat, any hat, so everyone has to say before the meeting starts, has to show up with a hat, with a cap, with something, and say what it means. Or maybe you can play a game. Or maybe you can say, okay, tomorrow we're all going to have to be in red, right? And I will share lastly this thing that I'm using a lot of my husband, but just because my husband's situation is that he's working from our house with his double screen. And because we don't have, we actually have an extra room. That's my office. That's the guest room. So he can't use it. And it's very small. So he's using our bedroom. So every time I walk into the bedroom, I see the big screen. And yesterday, as I was walking into the bedroom to take something, I see, like in this call, people in Zoom. I don't know if it was Zoom, but it was a camera. And they were running in place, right? Like running in place in front of the camera. And I looked at my husband and I said, what is that? Like, I have never seen something like that. And my husband is like, oh, that's the team in Europe. He's in London. She's in, they were all in Europe. And he said they're doing like a corporate run for a charity. They need to raise money. So they all have to run for an hour. And we have decided to do it in Zoom. So my husband was not running. He was just watching. So he was doing the thing, and it was, and he was talking to his peer in London, and the guy was like running. And I thought it was so funny. And who could have thought you could do a corporate run, in your house, and raise money for a cause? I think it's absolutely awesome. And I congratulate those kind of people who had this idea, because it would have never occurred to me. And that's why I would strongly encourage you, all of you, that, when you go back tomorrow with your team, you think about those things and just implement one new thing, just one, and ask feedback. Ask your colleague, ask your supervisor, ask anyone, what else they can think of to make this fun. We don't know how long it is going to be, so let's make the best out of it. And, I hope you enjoyed this session. We have, I don't know how many we have done with Elisa. We've done a lot. What we want during this time, we want to support our clients, our friends. We want our community. We want to make sure if there's anything we can do in terms of leadership or executive coaching, we are here to help.